Okay, so I think we should start. This mitzvah of Avos Yisrael, which is the third area that I want to touch on, I'm going to break up into two classes, one this week and one next week, because it's a little bit more detailed than the other two. And I was able to reduce the other two into one Shia. I did not figure out how to do this one in one Shia. We're dealing here with the mitzvah of Avos Yisrael. So I'm going to quote over here from the Sefer HaChinuch. Author is unknown. We just know he lived in Spain about 800 years ago, roughly. And he actually writes that he wrote this sefer for his teenage son and his friends, so they would have something what to do on a Shabbos afternoon. He says that the mitzvah is to love every yid, havas nefesh, meaning that he should care for the other person as much as he cares for himself, cares for the other person's belongings like he cares for himself. And he, as do many other Rishonim, early commentators, say that the statement of Hillel to the potential convert, that which is hateful to you, don't do to your friend, even though that's like a negative statement of Avos Yisrael, but they translate that to mean that that is what Avos Yisrael is. If you don't like it, don't do it to somebody else. Is there a positive aspect? It's not so 100% simple, because the Sefer HaChinuch continues and quotes from the Sifra that Rabbi Akiva says that this mitzvah is a klal godel shebaTorah. It's a major aspect in Torah. Sefer HaChinuch explains that many mitzvahs are dependent on this mitzvah. Because if you love somebody, you won't steal from him. You won't commit adultery with his wife. You won't cheat him out of money. You won't cheat him not out of money, but just to give him bad information or bad ideas. You won't encroach on his territory. You won't hurt him in any form or fashion. So from that perspective, many mitzvahs are dependent on this mitzvah. Okay, so we have some basic idea from the Sefer HaChinuch that the modality of behavior is what's important. And somehow all of the specific details, not stealing, not committing adultery, not damaging, etc., are somehow all included in this mitzvah of the Ahavta L'Reacha Kamoicha. The side question is, if Ruvain doesn't steal from Shimon, then has he fulfilled his mitzvah? If he steals, he's done an Aveira. But what does it mean he doesn't steal? So there are those that explain that he has an opportunity to steal and doesn't do so, so he has the fulfillment of a positive mitzvah of Avos Yisrael. Okay. The Ksavana Kabbalah from Rav Mecklenburg, who wrote the Sefer approximately in about 160, 180 years ago, roughly the same time as the Malbim. He, as does the Malbim, as much earlier the Ramban. I'll have a question. How can I give a command on basically what sounds like an emotion. I should love my reyacha, my friend, like you should love your friend like yourself. How can you command that I should have an emotion towards my friend? So the Ramban says that it's really not a command on an emotion. It's a command on action.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, how do we learn that from the pasuk? The Malbim basically says, because it says li're'acha, to your friend, and the verb ava, love, is always followed by the word es, like you have in Shema, v'afta es Hashem Elokecha. And I don't want to go into all of the digdik, all of the grammar, but the li, the to, the lamed there, is what enables the halacha to say we're dealing here with behavior, not emotion. I remember there was a fellow many years ago in shul, not the most likable fellow, to be perfectly blunt. He was a pretty obnoxious fellow. And he said to me one day, he says, you know, you're the only person that loves me. I said, why do you say that? He says, because you're nice to me. I said, maybe I'm nice to you and I can't stand your guts. How do you know what's in my heart? So the fellow says, don't you like me? I said, yeah, I happen to like you, but how do you know? So you can be nice to somebody because you want to be a nice fellow. No one knows what's in your heart. So therefore, how can you make a command on an emotion? It doesn't work. So the Ksava Kabbalah brings down a whole list over here of what does it mean that you should create a friendship, a very powerful friendship. That just, and he again also works it along the lines of Hillel, what's hateful to you, don't do to others. He says, just like you don't want somebody to deal with you in a false way, in a way of false flattery, don't behave to the person that way. You want to get covered, you want to be honored, you should give honor. You want to know how the person is doing so that when you ask him, how are you, you actually want an answer and you're willing to listen to the answer. That you share in his pain, you share in his joy. It goes into a much longer list. But the point basically is, as you want to be treated, as you want to be dealt with, that's how you should deal with the other person. And as the Sefer HaChinuch says, that the purpose of the mitzvah, and again, when he says the purpose, it means a purpose, because we really don't know for sure what all the reasons are for Torah. God says so. But as the Rambam says, there's a mitzvah to try to understand a possibility. So the Sefer HaChinuch says that when people get along and they treat each other in a fair, reciprocal way, that creates shalom, that creates a peace in the world. That people get along. So this is what we have over here. We have these explanations that the ahafta simply means as you want to be, well, Hillel says, as you don't want to be treated, don't do something to somebody that's hateful to you. And the Ksava Kabbalah brings down basically treat the person the way you want to be treated. Okay. So we mentioned the Ramban. Now let's look at the context of where this mitzvah of V'ahavta l'riacha shows up. There's a cute little story. I don't know if it's true or not, but during the Depression, there was a Rav that received $100 bill as a gift. Depression, $100 bill was king's ransom. He didn't know, there was no bank that he could trust. He didn't know where should he put it, that it's going to be safe. Came up with a great idea. Put it in the Chumash, and the Chumash says, Lo signaivu, in Parshas Kedoshim, the same Parsha that V'ahavta l'riacha kamocha shows up. Puts it in the Chumash. Okay, by here, Yom, the day came, he needed money. He says, I have $100 bill in the Chumash, and I'll take it out, and fine. Opens up the Chumash, there's no $100 bill there. And he's heartbroken, a chutzpah. You see a pasuk that says, Lo signoivu, don't steal. And you're stealing. My mama, he's heartbroken. How can you do that? Then he realized that there's something sticking out the next page. He says, maybe I made a mistake, and I thought I put it in. And sure enough, there by the pasuk, V'ahavta l'riacha kamocha, he finds a $50 bill. Okay.
$60 bill.
Right. You love your friend like yourself. So the guy, whoever. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but the context that we have, the pasuk V'ahavta l'riacha kamocha, the psukim, don't steal, don't deny that you steal, don't lie about it, don't swear falsely and profane God's name, don't force a sale, don't be a robber, don't not pay your workers, don't curse somebody that's deaf or put a stumbling block before somebody that's blind, meaning don't give bad advice. And there the pasuk says, V'yiresa me'elikecha, you should have fear of God, because God knows if you had in mind to give bad advice or not. Because Reuven says to Shimon, such and such a stock is a great deal. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But if it's a pump and dump scheme, he shouldn't be touting that as a good stock. Could be he's making a legitimate mistake. He thought it was a good stock. Turns out it's not a good stock. How do you know? You don't, but God knows. So the pasuk says, "V'yiresa me'elikecha," and Rashi brings down. And whenever it says "V'yiresa me'elikecha," it's because we don't know from the outside. It's not obvious what the person has in mind. And then it continues: don't do anything corrupt in the law. Don't show favoritism. Don't go tattletaling. Don't see your brother in a position of danger, and you have an ability to save him and you're not saving him. Then we have a pasuk that don't hate your brother in your heart. You should give rebuke to your friend. Don't let the disagreement or what he did wrong to you fester. Don't take revenge. Don't hold a grudge. V'ahavta l'riacha kamocha ani Hashem. You should love your friend as yourself. So the context of v'ahavta l'riacha kamocha is like the summary of an awful lot of negatives. An awful lot of don't do this, don't do that, don't do the other thing. So this gives us an idea of where, let's say, the Sefer HaChinuch is coming from, saying that what Hillel said to this potential convert. What's hateful to you, don't do to others. Because we have to do as a summary of don't do this, 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 and the other thing, all of which are negative. The Ramban, who has this big question, how do you give a command on an emotion? And he says it isn't a command on an emotion. It's a command on action. That one needs, in a positive way, not just stay away from all of the negatives, but do something in a positive way. So, okay, so he's talking that this has to do with action. The question comes in, if you're telling me that you can't give a command in regards to an emotion, so what are you doing with the loisisnas achicha b'levavecha? Don't hate your brother in your heart. That sounds like an emotion. Don't hate the guy. So how does that work? So the Ramban anticipated that question, and he says that the following few mitzvahs in that pasuk and the next pasuk are all part of not hating your brother in your heart, because you should not let it fester. You should confront him. Come over, walk over to the guy and say, why did you do this? You can't do it directly, do it indirectly. Find a friend of a mutual friend of yours or a friend of his and find out, why did the guy do what he did that you're finding it very hateful and you're now hating him? Similar to loisikim v'loisita, don't take revenge, don't hold a grudge. The Gemara gives an example that Shimon goes to Reuven and says, "Can you lend me your axe?" And Reuven says, "No, I'm not lending you my axe." The next day, or at some other point, Reuven goes to Shimon and says, "Shimon, can you lend me your shovel?" And Shimon says, "In spite of the fact that you didn't lend me your axe, I'll lend you my shovel." He's holding a grudge. Now, the Gemara specifically does it in that order because an axe is a delicate instrument, has to be sharpened, has to be handled properly. A shovel is not so delicate. So could be Reuven didn't want to give an axe to somebody that might not be able to take care of it properly. But Shimon, it's just a shovel. What's the problem? But Shimon is bearing a grudge. He should say either yes or no, not, "Hello, you didn't lend me, but I'm a nice guy, I'm going to lend you." So that's all part of don't hate your brother in your heart. Similarly, Shimon wants to borrow a shovel from Reuven, and Reuven says to him, "No." And then Reuven wants to borrow an axe from Shimon, and Shimon says to him, "I'm not lending you because you didn't lend me." Even though, again, you have the difference between the axe and the shovel. So one's taking revenge, I'm getting even with you. This is all part, so the Ramban says it's not a question so much of giving a command on an emotion, because when you think about it, the Torah is not telling you to have an emotion. The Torah is telling you not to have an emotion. That's a little bit easier to deal with than having an emotion. You have a problem, you have something that's hateful, that you want to hate the other fellow for, straighten it out. Don't let it sit there and fester. Okay, good. But I just point out, incidentally, there's what's called Masechtas Ketanos. These are not the regular run-of-the-mill Gemaras. usually found at the end of Masechtas Avodah Zarah, where the Pirkei Avos is. So there's one Masechtas called Derech Eretz, about basically laws of civility. There's a big Masechta, a little Masechta. There's Kala, a Masechta starts off with laws of getting married, but there's also a Rabossi and a Zuta, a big one and a little one. So there, the Gemara, this Masechta says as follows: if you want to develop a friendship, right? If you want to have a friend, treat him like you want to be treated. Go out of your way to treat him the way you want to be treated, which is very similar to the way the Ksav and Kabbalah puts it together. There's, on Pirkei Avos, there's a Mishnah that says, Ezeu Chacham, who's a knowledgeable person, Halaymin Mikol Adam, somebody that learns from everyone. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe of Nachman Mendel of Shneisen of blessed memory, Chusa Yogan Aleinu, has an interesting question. He says, what does it mean, Mikol Adam, from everybody? It says that you learn from people. Okay, that fits in with many of the commentaries, that somebody that's interested in learning for the sake of learning is willing to learn from those that might not be as knowledgeable as he is, but they may have some information that he doesn't have, or they may have an insight that he doesn't have. But Mikol Adam is everybody. How does that work? So the Rebbe points out an interesting thing. Because the Mishnah says Mikol Adam, from everybody, that means everybody has something that you can learn. Everybody has something that they can give over to you. But they may not even realize what they have to contribute, because they feel that they're totally incapable, they're totally useless, they're on the bottom of the barrel, whatever it is. So the Rebbe says, from a perspective of the mitzvah of Avos Yisrael, you should work with this fellow to figure out what it is that he can contribute to you. That's an important factor. This is all part of how do you want to be treated, how do you want to treat. But the Rebbe is like really pushing the envelope over here, that everybody that you meet has something to contribute to your understanding of the world, your understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or your understanding of yourself. So we know, I'm going back to the Chumash over here, we know that Rashi in Chumash is explaining things in a very simple manner, not a simplistic manner. He's telling you, he's explaining Pshutei Shel Mikra. What's the simple, uncomplicated explanation of the pasuk? So on V'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha, Rashi says, Omer Rabbi Akiva, Zeh klal godel b'Torah. Rabbi Akiva says this is a very big rule, a very fundamental rule in Torah. And I'll, in a moment, show you what the Rebbe does, how he analyzes this Rashi. But I want to first mention that in the Sifra, where this statement of Rabbi Akiva is found, Ben Azai, who's a contemporary of Rabbi Akiva, says, Zeh Toldes Odom, which is a pasuk in the beginning, towards the end of the Parsha Bereshis. This is the generations of Odom. Odom Arishain is a klal gadol b'yoser, is a bigger fundamental statement. So the Mefarshim, the commentators, have a question. What do you mean that Zeh Sefer told us Adam is an even bigger rule than v'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha? How does that work? Right? Love your friend as yourself. And the counter to that is, this is the generations of Adam. Okay, it's a pasuk, but what does one have to do? You're saying that this is a more fundamental rule, a bigger aspect, that they explain as follows. V'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha could be interpreted by somebody that's self-hating, somebody that's down in the dumps, and he wants to drag everybody down with him. Says if I'm in the gutter, then I want you to be like me. Not I want to be like you. I want you to be like me. I'm the kamoicha. So come down, join me in the gutter. That's not so good. And Azai says, Zeh Sefer told us Adam. Who is Adam? He was created in God's image. Because it says, God created Adam, Talmud Musai, in his image. Ooh, this is a bigger rule. Everybody has to be treated from the perspective that they have a divine aspect in them. They're God's form and image. Okay, that's just a little bit incidental. Comes along the Rebbe, and he's analyzing this Rashi. He says, what part of the V'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha do we not understand that Rashi has to make a comment? What's bothering Rashi that has to say anything? V'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha means love your friend as yourself. Finished. You want to know how to apply it or whatever? Open up a Shulchan Aruch, open up the Code of Laws, and see what does it mean. Like we did. We opened up a Sefer Achinuch. You can open up a Rambam, right? It means treat the guy like a mensch. Treat the guy the way you want to be treated. What's the problem over here? So the Rebbe gives the following list of what's bothering Rashi. First and foremost, we just went through, I just went through with you, a whole list. Don't steal, don't deny that you stole, don't lie, don't swear falsely about it, don't lie and swear falsely about it, etc., etc., etc. And then you tell me, v'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha. What did I leave out that you have to tell me, v'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha? I already told you every single thing not to do. There's nothing that's not included in that list over there. So what am I gaining with v'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha? Second question that's bothering Rashi is what's bothering the Ramban. Because one of the questions the Ramban has, besides how do you give a command on an emotion, is how do you give a command that Reuven should love Shimon the same way that Reuven loves himself. As a matter of fact, the question of why doesn't Rabbi Akiva use the pasuk of Ben Azai? They're all, Zeh Sefer told us Adam that man is created in God's image and therefore should be treated with the utmost respect, just as the man himself wants to be treated. Why is he sticking on v'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha? And it's a fascinating answer that's given. Pasuk says, "V'chei yichichi imach," your brother should live with you. And the Gemara brings down that Rav Patidra, I'm pronouncing it correctly, answered the following question. Two people in the desert. One person has water, the other one doesn't. There's enough water for one of them to survive to make it into the city. They share the water, both are going to die. But this Rapatidro says, share the water, and if they both die, they both die. Comes along Rabbi Akiva and says, no. They should live. Your life comes first. If you're able to help the other person to live, to survive, then do so. If you can't, you come first. So is up to a certain point, but not to the point of giving up your life if the other guy is not going to live anyways. So that's one of the questions that are Ramban, but the simple meaning of kamoicha means you have to love the person as you love yourself. So why am I not sharing my water with him? Both people are not going to make it. Okay, they're not going to make it. They're not going to make it. And the third question is, Rashi had said earlier by the V'yoresim Elikecha that whenever we're dealing here with something that we don't know what's in the person's heart, the Torah uses the expression V'yoresim Elikecha. You should know that God knows what's in your heart. And therefore, if you're out to cheat somebody, even though you have on the outside, it looks like you didn't cheat him, you meant the best, but if you know that you really cheated the guy, so you should know that God knows too. So if the Ahavta L'Reacha Kamoicha is a mitzvah on an emotion, why doesn't it say V'yoresim Elikecha? Maybe I'm nice to the guy, but I really can't stand his guts. I really hate the guy, but I'm being nice to him. If I just transgress V'ahavta L'Reacha Kamoicha, this is what's bothering Rashi. V'ahavta L'Reacha Kamoicha is anything but simple. Not so simple. So therefore, Rashi tells you as follows. Yes, we have a myriad of details over here. Don't steal and don't rob and don't lie and don't cheat and don't hold a grudge, etc., etc. But there's a general rule. These are only details of that general rule. This Rashi is a klal gadol, the fundamental rule of the Ahavta L'Reacha Kamoicha, under which everything else is subsumed. The second one is and the second thing that Rashi is telling us over here, that Kamoicha is dealing here with action and not with emotion. That as you should not do all of those negative things that we just mentioned, that will create a V'ahavta L'Reacha Kamoicha. That will create your good behavior. In other words, your lack of negativity will create a positivity by the other person. You had an opportunity to rob, to cheat, to lie, to steal, etc., and you didn't do it. That creates an atmosphere of not lying, cheating, robbing, and so on and so forth. And once we said anywhere in that long list of V'yoresim Elikecha, you should be mindful that God is paying attention to what's in your heart. So if on any detail this statement is given, so that's all part of the whole entire klal, the whole entire general rule. And the truth is that there's more details scattered throughout the rest of Chumash on how yes to behave. So it's a klal gadol. It's not just only exclusively for what's in these few psukim over here. So that explains why Rashi says Zek klal gadol b'Torah. The general rule, it fits in. This is not a separate, specific detail. This is the summation of all of those negative mitzvahs, which by not doing all of those mitzvahs, we have a fighting chance of creating a positive state, like the Sefer HaChinuch says, of creating shalom, of creating peace, of creating unity. I'm not going to be bad to you. I don't want you to be bad to me. And then, as the Ksava Kabbalah says, so this is how I would like to be treated. So I'll treat you this way, and there'll be a reciprocation. You'll treat me this way accordingly. But why does Rashi have to tell me that this is in the name of Rabbi Akiva? So we already mentioned this because Rabbi Akiva is the one that says that if you have two people that are in the desert, there's only enough for water for one, so he gets it first. So this avoids the question of the Ramban. What does it mean, kamoicha? Kamoicha means as long as everything is in a sense equal, then it's kamoicha, then it's like you. But if you're going to have to give up your existence, that's not a kamoicha. It's parallel to the cheyachichimach, that your brother should live with you. But if you're not living, your brother doesn't have to live with you because you're not living. And further, Rabbi Akiva is also the author in Pirkei Avos of the statement, Chavivin Yisrael shnikro bonim lamokim. The Yidden are dear because they are called children to Hashem. The end of the Mishnah over there is, and it's a greater love that Hashem let us know about it. And there's a story with Rabbi Akiva that when Rufus, who was a Roman general or Roman proctor, wanted to know, why is God tolerating the Yidden? They're not behaving. Because he understood that if the Yidden would be doing mitzvahs and learning Torah, that the Romans would not have been able to conquer them. So they're obviously not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And they should assimilate into the Roman culture. And one of the reasons that the Romans had such a major hassle, according to Svarim, basically the Yidden made up roughly about 10% of the population of the Roman Empire. There was literally millions and millions of Yidden. And the Romans were afraid that if they didn't assimilate, that they would cause a lot of problems for the empire. And historically, very sadly, they killed millions of Yidden. There was a very small population left when they were through with their massacres. So Tunis Rufus is trying to have this discussion with Rabbi Akiva. And he says, if a king sentences his servant to prison and makes a statement, nobody should give this prisoner food or drink, and somebody goes and gives the prisoner food and drink, the king's going to be very angry at him. Because he gave strict orders, don't do this. So with this, the Roman wanted to say to Rabbi Akiva, what are you, God wants you in exile. What are you feeding and feeding them with Torah? Forget it. It's a lost cause. Rabbi Akiva says, I'll tell you, oh, one second, and Tunis Rufus says, and the Jews are called servants. They're my servants. The Rabbi Akiva says to him, I'll give you a marshal. The king is mad at his son. He's angry at his son, puts him in jail, and says, I don't want anybody to feed or give this guy food or drink. Somebody goes and gives the prince food and drink. The king hears about it. He's going to be very happy because deep down, he's really angry at the act that the prince did, not really angry at the prince. So, okay, you saved the prince's life. Thank you. And why is that? Because we're called Bonim. Bonim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem. So if we're children to Hashem, then we're all brothers. And if we're all brothers, then I could maybe love you kamoicha, because you're not a stranger. You're my own flesh and blood. The Rashi is adding, Omer Rabbi Akiva, Zeklan Godel Batayra. Who's the author of this statement? Because Rashi doesn't always give the name of who's making the statement. And when he does, it's important. This is Rabbi Akiva that on one hand says, your life comes first, and therefore you can love the person up to a certain extent. But aside from that specific halachic detail, it is kamoicha. If you're not in this desperate state that there's only one bottle of water and only one person is going to be able to make it with that one bottle of water, you don't have to share. But that's a very, very rare situation. But otherwise, it is kamoicha. It's my brother. What am I not going to do for my brother? Not a stranger. The Rabbi, so Rashi is coming along according to the Rebbe's interpretation and says that v'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha is not so simple. We need to understand exactly what it means. It's a summary, it's the totality of all of those negative statements. First and foremost, it's in a sense of a sur meira, go away from evil. Don't do any of these evil things. And then there is a positive aspect to it. It's kamoicha. The same Rabbi Akiva that says that you're children to Hashem, meaning we're all brothers, is telling you it could be kamoicha. The Mitzvah Hashem next week, we're going to look at the teachings of the Ba'al Shem Tov and of the Baal Tanya, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, that this is, yes, an emotion, and this is, yes, to be interpreted not just in action, but in feeling as well. So, and in Mitzvah Hashem, hopefully we'll have a few extra minutes next week. There's a very beautiful Chassidic story with Rabbi Moshe Leib Sassover that ties in all of the three things that we've learned, namely, or that we touched on, Simcha, Hashgacha Pratis, and Avos Yisrael. So until next week, everybody should have a good, healthy week.
All right.
Mr. Sokolov, just one fast question.
Yeah.
I see that this is being recorded. How does one get a copy of the recording? One of my students asked me.
Who's recording it?
Oh, I don't know. It looked to me like it was the red light over here that says recording.
Oh, so it must
Must be through Zoom.
Who owns it? Whose Zoom is it running on? That's the question.
Okay.
Maybe Rabbi Hellman knows.
Rabbi Hellman probably knows.
Check in the office with Carol.
So Carol in the office knows,
She
yeah.
might be the host.
Okay, fine.
That's probably where it is. Yeah, that's where you're getting. Yep.
Okay, fine.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
All
Good
right.
evening.
Right.
It might be on the actually. It might be on the website too. There's a tab on the top of on the website.
The Young Israel website?
Yeah, which
Okay.
says, I'll tell you in a minute. Hold on. Just pull it up.
Oh, by the way, does anybody have any questions now that I think of it?
Yes, I do, if it's okay.
Sure.
Thank you. So if we say that we can understand that doesn't have to be a halacha of emotion because it says le, so how do we address Hashem, which doesn't have the le?
The same way, Avos Hashem has to do with emotion. B'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol meyodecha is all active things that a person needs to do.
But it's, how can we express love if it's actions? Doing his mitzvahs?
Well, that's definitely a big part of it. Because, give you an example. I once saw a cartoon. It was very cute. There's a fellow sitting in his lounge chair, very casually dressed, and his wife is there in a business suit with an attaché case, and looks like she's about to walk out the door. And she says, "What do you mean I don't love you? Didn't my people contact your people?" You know, even if you say 1,000 times a day, "I love you," to your spouse or to your wife, let's leave it at your wife, and you never go over to the sink to wash dishes, you know, like, okay, thank you very much. You know, don't tell me you love me and go wash the dishes. There's practical application. It's not enough just to think you love God, or enough just to even verbalize it. You have to do something, because otherwise, what does it mean that you're loving God?
And the Manda Omer that doesn't say it has to be an action, that it can be the emotion. How do we do that?
No. The Ba'al Shem Tov is throwing in an additional aspect. He's not minimizing that you don't need to do actions. He's adding an additional layer on the mitzvah that you need to actively work on developing an emotion that's completely above and beyond everything that we've learned today.
Thank you very much. Yashikov.
Okay. Stop.
Reb Zev, did you find anything?
I did not find it. I have to check.
Okay, no, I have to call Rabbi Hellman about something else anyway.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Sorry.
I'll get it.
fine, not a problem. Good night, everybody.
All right.
Good night.
Night.
Yeah.